mind. Never mind. But thank you, Lily. Yeah, let's take the banner off and get on with this, talking about this now. Yeah, so this case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, it is grim. I've got to just give you this warning. At the end of the day, Celeste, she was a child. This girl allegedly was groomed from the age of 11 by a man who's at least, I think he's 8 years older than her. I mean, he's not really old, but, he's about 20 now, I think. He's a man. At the end of the day, he's a man, and she was a little girl. And when he first started grooming her, I think it's unclear how they first met, though it seems to be online. She was only 11 years old. Oh my goodness. Probably looked a little bit like this picture. And never got a chance really to get much older than that, because by the time she was 14, she was dead. And not only dead, but dismembered, murdered, found in the front of David's car, in his Tesla, decapitated, dismembered, so badly decomposed it was difficult to tell the cause of death. Thought to have been lured to David's house and cut up in a paddling pool. Stabbed first, and then maybe it's even thought that did he sit there and watch her bleed out? I mean, the thing is, there's something very strange about David, because this is not normal. This is before allegedly murdered Celeste, or was it? He was writing songs about murder. He's a pseudo-intellectual that's always on there. Was always on his Tik-Tok talking about God and the meaning of life and, the meaning of his songs. But really, to me, he's just full of shit. Only a young girl would be impressed by him, because he talked such a load of rubbish. Anybody older would think, what? What a twonk. What a complete twonk. But little girls are easy to manipulate, aren't they? Little girls like Celeste, easy to manipulate. And the thing is, David was a singer. He was on the brink of big stardom. If he wouldn't have murdered Celeste and been arrested for it, he'd be probably still on his European tour by now. He was on the verge. He was doing well anyway, but he was on the verge of being, superstar, really, an international star. And a lot of people are surmising, is that why he killed Celeste? Did Celeste pose a threat to him? That if she was going to come out and expose him for being a PDF? And did he decide, oh no, she's not going to be able to do that, I'm going to get rid of her? But why did he not dispose of her remains? He seemed to carry them around for months. He did buy a chainsaw. In fact, he bought 2 chainsaws on Amazon. He bought an incinerator. He looked, his Amazon list was like, how to commit a murder or how to be a serial killer, really, and dispose of bodies. Now, information that's coming out now during these preliminary hearings, they had this. To me, I'm looking at them thinking, when you read the actual text messages that went between David and Celeste, they're like quite, they suggest a committed relationship. not just a fling. They spent a lot of time together. David took Celeste away on trips. I think they went to London, to Scotland. So that's the other thing that we know, that David said he didn't know how old she really was. Well, of course he did, because he got her passport sorted for her, booked her flights. Of course he knew how old she was. He knew exactly how old she was. And in his text to Celeste and in hers back to him, it's a very surprisingly mature relationship for it, because she was only 13 by, I mean, we don't know exactly when their relationship got physical. We don't know exactly when it got physical, do we? But if he was grooming her from 11 and she died when she was, 13 or 14, because it's not clear exactly when she died. She never became an adult, did she? But the texts between them are like surprisingly adult, I think. So this little girl was faced with decisions like whether to have an abortion or not, decisions that a grown woman would struggle with. Because whatever you think of terminating pregnancies, whether you're a supporter of it or whether you're against it, and we all have our views for various reasons, I think surely what everybody could agree with, it's not an easy decision, and it's something you've got to live with for the rest of your life. Now, I've been lucky enough in my life, I've never had a termination. But, I never was in a position where I had to consider it. I don't know what I would have done in certain circumstances. I would never judge somebody whether it's something I agree with or not, because until you're actually in that situation, you don't know what you might do. But what I do know is I know people who have had terminations and have regretted it for the rest of their life. I also know people who've had terminations that, I won't say they're happy with the decision that they made, but they accept that it was the right decision at the time. But I also know several people who wish they had never done it. So what I'm trying to say is these are big decisions. They're not decisions that a 13-year-old should have to make. A grown woman struggles with that decision of whether to have termination or not. Anyway, that's a decision Celeste had to take, and David encouraged her in that. But, let's suppose Celeste would have lived and they would have split up. I'm sure David would never even thought of that termination again. But Celeste, it was her body, it was her who had to go and have the termination. I'm sure that would have lived with her for a long, long time. And I imagine that when you do have children later on in life, how could you look at those children and not think of the child that you terminated? Anyway, that's how it strikes me. So what I'm trying to say is, this little girl was being forced to make decisions that would have been difficult for an adult, never mind a 13-year-old. Thanks to him. He was a man. Why, apparently they were using the morning after pill. Why wasn't he using a condom? Or, was he just thinking, oh, well, it's all right, she gets pregnant, she can just have a termination, or she can just take the morning after pill. 13-year-old girl shouldn't have to be doing that. Anyway, that's one thing that has come out in this hearing, the intimate text that went between them. As I say, they show that it was actually a serious relationship. It wasn't a fling. And David seems to really care about Celeste in the texts and things. Now, I just want to read you this thread. And this seems to suggest, now we don't know if Celeste's mum and dad knew about their relationship. Certainly, I'm not criticizing them at all, because I've seen how upset they are. They've got to sit through court looking at dismembered pictures of their daughter. And maybe they did do things wrong. Maybe they did do things wrong. Well, anyone who's a parent knows that you do things wrong. And if you think you can stop a 13-year-old or who really wants to go and see their boyfriend, if you think you could stop them, well, I would challenge anyone about that. Because anyone who's had children, boys or girls, you know that the difference between a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, it literally is like flicking a switch. Once the hormones start going, puberty sets in, that's it. All they're interested in is boys or girls, or it's puberty. Their sort of hormones take over, and trying to stop someone of 13 going to visit an 18-year-old, I'd say it's pretty virtually impossible, because I think even I've seen it a million times on crime shows. Even if you lock them in their bedroom, they'll find a way. They'll be out the window. David found a way to keep in contact with Celeste, didn't he, when her phone was taken off her? He had another pupil at the school smuggle her a new phone so that she could keep in contact with him. You can never underestimate the determination of a teenager to continue a relationship. So anyone criticizing Celeste's parents, I would just say that to them, have a bit of a heart. They're the ones that are having to live with this. I'm sure whatever they did wrong or didn't do wrong, they're already living with it. So they don't need you to tell them that they were bad parents or whatever. And I don't know that they were bad parents. So these texts that I'm going to read out to you, he was 19 and she was 13. 13. Oh my God. Anyway, so on June the 19th, 2024, apparently at 1:18 a.m., Celeste texted, "Does your mum know we had sex yet?" And he said, "She thinks that's the first thing we're going to do when we see each other." So it seems to suggest that at least David's mother, Colleen, was aware that they were having an sex relationship. Then on August the 30th, 2024, Celeste texted, "Realistically, I care about you. I killed my kid for you." David, it has to be in the right time with the least complications. Celeste, I still would have been there for it. So these texts are suggesting to me maybe Celeste didn't want to terminate that pregnancy. She did it for David. And David said, yeah, selfishly, because it would have also been mine. Celeste says, David, I'm going to have to lie to people around me, even my kid, for the rest of my life. And then Celeste said, I don't like talking about it because it gets me really upset, but I'd do it again. Ay, ay, ay. Just, as you can see why she would, and he'll have talked her into it, but it seems like it didn't sit easy with her. Anyway, allegedly, of course, allegedly. What's other things that are coming out? So, yeah, these texts, why is this little girl being forced to make decisions that even a grown woman would struggle with? What else? Oh, so also A lot of sex photos and things have come out that were on David's phone. So explicit images of them having sex, genitalia, just dozens and dozens of embarrassing photos, you might say. It's a shame that they have to be shown in court. Apparently, Celeste's parents got really upset seeing that. I mean, could you imagine 1 minute this is your little girl, just like a little girl, and then the next minute you're being shown these pictures of her having explicit sex with David? That's going to be a shock. Nobody should see. It's just not something you want to see, is it? Photos of your child having sex. Goodness sake. And apparently that's the only time that David himself has shown any emotion. Because he's sitting through all this, not showing a little bit of emotion. He's listened to everything they're talking about. He's looked at the images of the decomposing, decapitated body of Celeste and never batted an eyelid. But apparently got a little bit uncomfortable when these naked photos were being shown. Well, there were photos of his male parts. I hope somebody got a ruler out and measured it, because I just think, was that why he got uncomfortable? Does he think people are going to look at him and think, oh, he's not very big? Is it button mushroom territory? God, I cannot bear this man. I cannot bear him. What he did to Celeste is allegedly is unforgivable. So apparently when he was arrested, of course, he was just chilled out eating potato chips or whatever. He said he tried to make out initially, he didn't even really know Celeste. She was just some girl, and she told him she was 18, but then somebody else told him she was 13. He knew exactly how old she was because he'd seen her passport and booked her flights and things. So of course he knew how old he was. And apparently when all these texts were going backwards and forwards about whether Celeste should have a termination or not, he asked her, is it my baby? That's just the bloody cheek of it. And he said to her, oh, it's just that my mum always said I should ask that question. I think his mum is a bit of an enabler, to be honest. That's what I feel, reading between the lines. It reminds me a bit of Madeline Soto, really, because it's like, I suppose if Stefan Stearns wouldn't have pled no contest, all Madeline's images that he had on the phone would have been brandished around the courtroom, wouldn't they? All the videos he had, all the photos of her in compromising positions. So that's the only good thing about the fact that Stefan Stearns pled no contest. But of course, it means he never had to explain what happened. But it's spared, I suppose, Madeline, what's the word? I say embarrassment. I mean, she was deceased, of course, but the ignominy or the horrible thought that sex images would be brandished around of her, would be brandished around the courtroom. So that didn't happen in the Madeline Soto case. Now, I still feel that David might try and get a plea deal at some point, in which case I wish he would have done it before now, so we did, those images didn't have to be flashed around the court. Anyway, now something that I've just started to think about this, because of course the generally accepted theory at the moment is that Celeste was maybe threatening to expose David because she'd found out he was, this is what people are saying, I'm not saying it's true because we don't know yet the truth, but that David, people are saying, or the rumours that are going around, is that Celeste had found out he had other women that he was texting, etc. She started to get a bit annoyed about that, a bit jealous about that. She was threatening him with exposure. This is one thing that people are saying. But something else has occurred to me since these texts have started coming out. Because apparently, going back the whole relationship, the messages that went in between David and Celeste, he's the one doing all the pursuing. This is not like a girl, starry eyed about a boy. And she's like, oh, please, can I see you? And please don't finish with me, or this, that, and the other. No, it's not like that. It's almost the opposite. It's like David, he's pursuing her. He's the one, we need to spend more time together. We need to go on this trip. We should do this and we should do that. And I've just started to think, what if the motive for killing Celeste was in fact that Celeste was trying to finish it with him? Because she had said to him she was sick of it. It was just lying around having sex. She wanted more to a life than that. She wasn't clinging to him. If anything, he was clinging to her. Did she tell him she was going to leave him? Maybe she met somebody else. You just wonder, don't you? We're getting this narrative that, he killed Celeste because she was threatening to expose him. But was it the other way around? Did he kill her because she was trying to get away from him? We know that most violence in relationships happens when a partner is trying to leave. I would imagine with David, Celeste would have been like his possession. That's why twonks like this pick young girls, because they couldn't get away with it with older women, because they won't put up with it the same. He's picked a young girl because she's easy to manipulate. And it just makes you wonder, isn't it? Did he look on her as his possession? And when Celeste maybe did start growing up and getting more independent, and maybe she was saying to him, well, we know she was saying to him, I want more to my life than just sitting around having sex all the time and not doing anything else. I want more. Maybe she was starting to outgrow him a little bit. Maybe at 11, she's still immature, obviously, but girls can mature quite young, like mentally. Maybe she started to see him for what he was. I don't know. Just occurred to me because the way of these texts that have gone between them, it is always him. Let's spend more time together. Let's move in together. Talking about marriage. Talking about having children in the future when it's the right time. It's always him instigating those conversations. So was Celeste actually murdered because she decided she didn't want to see him anymore? I just wonder. Is it a possibility? Anyway, because, we're thinking that it's because he had a lot of course, he was on the brink of superstardom, and he disposed of Celeste because of that reason. But then why did he hang on to her for so long? Maybe he couldn't bring himself to dispose of her. Maybe because, the thing is, we can't understand the way these twonks' minds work. Sometimes they just can't let go, even when the person's dead. Sometimes they bury them somewhere, close by so they can go and visit them. It's their secret, where they are. It's like a control thing. So very strange that he didn't dispose of her in all that time. I think. But anyway, this whole case is weird, isn't it? In the worst way. Now I'm just going to read for you what the County of Los Angeles medical examiner. Now, it took them a long time, remember, to release the details of the autopsy, and this is what it said. The cause and manner of death determination for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. They determined that the cause and manner of death is multiple penetrating injuries caused by objects. The manner of death is homicide. So that's what was finally decided. So, but they did not release their findings, did they? For quite a long time. Even though they determined the cause of manner of death on December the 9th, 2025, the examination was actually done on September the 10th. So they delayed the findings for quite a long time. So anyway, he said, after several months, I'm grateful this information can now be released, not only to the public, but also to the grieving family enduring loss. It's unfathomable that they have had to wait this long to learn what happened to their daughter. So yeah, they had to wait quite a long time, didn't they, before they found out what the cause of death was. Anyway, so we're going to carry on covering this case. But the other thing I just wanted to say is, where are the defence going to go with this case? How are they going to defend this? So something that has been mentioned, they're already mentioning that because there was such a lot of decomposition, that maybe she inflicted the stab wounds on herself. Is this the crap this guy's going to come up with? Is he going to say she attacked him and then turn the knife on herself? Is this what he's going to say? What other defence have they got? I think either he is going to change his plea when all this overwhelming evidence comes out. Surely his defence will advise him of that. Or he's going to come up with some total cock and bull, cockamamie story that she came round there with a knife. You can just imagine it. She came round with a knife and she threatened me with the knife, and then I said to her we were finished, so she turned it on herself. I mean, I can just hear this twonk saying it, because he is a complete twonk. And you know what? He can lie effortlessly. He lies. He's lied right from the beginning by saying that he hardly knew her. And now it turns out, they were in an intimate relationship. And even though she was a child, they were in an adult relationship, even discussing, things such as terminations, etc. The texts that went in between them were the texts that would go in between adults, not a man and a child. So he lied about all that. He's an effortless liar. So is that what he's going to do? Come up with some lie? Yeah, self-defense. Turned up with a machete, Your Honour, or whatever knife implement it was. Yeah, she turned up and she threatened me with it, and before I could take it off her, she turned it on herself and, stabbed herself in the ribs. I could just see him saying it, to be honest. He is that much of an idiot, because he is a thicko as well, because he thinks he's covered his tracks, because he thinks he's a pseudo-intellectual, but he could only... He's intellectual next to an 11-year-old girl, but if he was in a jury of his peers, like, with actual men and women, grown men and women, they would just think, oh, what an idiot. Well, that's what I think whenever I hear him talk. Whenever I watch an interview of his and he's babbling on all his pseudo-intellectualism, you just think, what are you talking about? You can tell he's just talking a load of rubbish. But that's the sort of thing that can impress a little girl, isn't it? Or his fans, who are all quite young. Anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you about poor Celeste. It's been, these are the preliminary hearings that are going on at the moment. So this is to decide whether it should go to trial or not, and what evidence can be presented in trial, etc. So there's been some horrible. It's been very gory because the actual remains have been shown in court. Turns out there were 9 air fresheners in that Tesla, all covered in maggots. It's grim. The details of this case is grim. And at the heart of it all, they weren't remains in that car. They weren't just remains covered in maggots. It was this little girl that was in that car. She was a little girl who was living and breathing and living. And this twonk allegedly decided he didn't want her to live anymore. So don't forget, one of his charges is lying in wait. So it's not believed it was a crime of passion. He was lying in wait. He'd bought the paddling pool to put her up in. He planned it. He planned it, didn't he? So I wouldn't be surprised if he changes his plea as time goes on. But anyway, so on Monday, they're back in court for more grim details, I suppose. Doesn't he feel any remorse? I would definitely say from the messages that are exchanged between them, at one point, David did seem to genuinely care about Celeste. Or did he? Because psychopaths can pretend that they care, can't they? So did he actually care about her? I just don't know. We don't know for certain. And yeah, did he kill her because she was getting in his way? Or did he kill her because she was trying to get away from him? That wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. This man's a control freak. And if Celeste turned around to him and said, look, I just don't want to do this anymore, I don't think he would have let her go easily. Anyway, so I'll be back to talk about that, as soon as more details come out. So it's Monday before the next court hearing.